The illusion of self and the birth of suffering. Buddhist teachings. Introduction. Why does the self suffer? Buddhism teaches that the sense of self lies at the root of our suffering. In our daily lives, we often find ourselves thinking, "This is me," or "This belongs to me," which attaches personal meaning to things based on a perspective centered around the self. However, in reality, this very sense of self is merely an illusion, one that creates various struggles and sufferings. In this script, we'll explore how the illusion of self brings suffering, and through understanding the Buddhist concept of non-self, we'll find a path to inner peace. Chapter 1. What exactly is the self? What exactly is the self? From an early age, we recognize ourselves as this person, shaped by our name, personality, hobbies, and values that help us define ourselves as distinct from others. This sense of self may seem necessary for social living, but from a Buddhist viewpoint, it's seen as something without substance. The components of the self. Buddhism suggests that human beings are made up of 5 elements called the 5 aggregates. These aggregates, form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, temporarily come together to form the self. However, as these components are always changing, there's no true fixed self that remains constant. For example, our body ages over time, and our emotions and thoughts change daily. Through this understanding, it becomes clear that what we think of as the self is actually something fluid and uncertain. The concept of non-self. The Buddhist concept of non-self points to the idea that the self is actually an illusion. Non-self means that there is no fixed essence of me. When we stop clinging to the idea of a stable self and let go of attachment to it, we find freedom. This is one path to mental liberation that Buddhism seeks to impart. Chapter 2. How the self gives rise to suffering. How does the illusion of self give rise to suffering? It's because we believe in the existence of the self that we want to possess things or fear losing them. Because we distinguish between me and mine, dissatisfaction, envy, anger, and other negative emotions arise when things don't go our way. The relationship between attachment and suffering. In Buddhism, attachment is considered the root of suffering. By clinging to the idea that this is mine, we experience fear of loss and sadness if we do lose it. If we had no sense of mine, the very concept of loss would cease to be a source of suffering. For instance, if you see a lost item and know it's someone else's, you might not give it much thought. However, if that item is something precious to you, then fear or even shock can quickly surface. In this way, suffering is born from attachment. Comparison to others and feelings of inferiority. The sense of self also creates a tendency to compare ourselves to others, giving rise to both feelings of inferiority and superiority. Seeing someone else's success can bring envy, while feeling superior to others can lead to arrogance. However, without the concept of a self, these comparisons and judgments would no longer hold meaning, and inner peace would be within reach. Chapter 3. Buddhist teachings to let go of the self. So, how can we let go of the sense of self and find inner peace? Buddhism offers various methods for understanding and practicing non-self. Meditation and self-reflection. Meditation is an essential tool for deeply observing one's inner self. By observing how thoughts and emotions arise and fade through meditation, we can realize that the sense of self is a temporary phenomenon. Furthermore, meditation helps calm the mind and shifts us away from self-centered thinking. Cultivating compassion. In Buddhism, compassion and kindness towards others, known as loving kindness, are highly valued. By cultivating compassion, prejudices and hostility towards others gradually diminish, and our attachment to the self softens. Through the practice of compassion, we feel connected to others. The boundary of the self fades, and we naturally find peace in our hearts. Understanding impermanence. In Buddhism, the teaching of impermanence explains that everything is in a constant state of flux. The self is also subject to this impermanence as it continuously changes. By understanding impermanence, our attachment to the self gradually diminishes, allowing us to live with a lighter heart. Chapter 4. The freedom of the heart in the state of non-self. What happens when we reach the state of non-self? It is a state of true freedom, liberated from fixed ideas and attachments. Freedom from comparison. In the state of non-self, there is no need to compare oneself to others. The person who has attained non-self no longer needs to measure themselves against others, allowing them to accept themselves as they are. This means that in daily life, they are no longer swayed by others' opinions, allowing them to maintain a calm heart. Freedom from fear and anxiety. As the sense of self fades, so do fear and anxiety. Particularly, the fear of death and failure becomes less severe. Death is an unavoidable part of life and part of the cycle of impermanence. In the state of non-self, these fears are naturally accepted, bringing peace to the heart. Conclusion: the Buddhist path to liberation from the self. The Buddhist path to liberation from the illusion of the self lightens our hearts and grants us true freedom. As long as we're bound by the concept of the self, we suffer from attachment and comparison in our daily lives. However, by understanding and practicing non-self, we free ourselves from such burdens. In a heart released from self-centered views, compassion and kindness toward others emerge naturally, and a serene and fulfilling life unfolds.